Well, hello and welcome. I'm Manish Anand. The Rise in the Hills brings to you a daily analysis of the editorials carried by India's top English newspapers. At the Rise in the Hills, we bring a lot of contents for thinking minds, and in today's episode, you will see our discussion on global growth gloom, the Nobel Prize for Literature to Annie Arnox, and the unfinished agenda of the left parties to unite. The World Bank has come up with its report in which it has said that the outlook for the economy of the global economy is not so great. It has scaled down the global growth projection, including India. On this, the Hindu and the Indian Express have come out with their editorials, and they have commented on the issue with an Indian perspective, because if we look at the Indian growth projection, it was stated to be about 8.2% at the beginning of the current financial year, but which had later been lowered by the Reserve Bank of India to 7.2 and then 7%. And now the World Bank says that it could go down to 6.7%. In this context, the Hindu says in its editorial that if we look at the Indian perspective, then it is going to be disappointing because we are a nation of 130 crore people, and economic growth less than 8% is going to be not sustainable for our aspirations to become a developed country in a shorter frame of time. If you look at the government's decision in the recent times that Pradhan Mantri Anna Kalyan Yojana, in which 80 crore of the people are being provided with free food grains. So we will have such sort of situation continuing if we don't grow at a very faster rate, more than 8%. And in this context, the Indian Express has reminded that the World Trade Organization has also said that the global trade would only grow by 1%, while the earlier projection was about 3.5%. And in this context, in the last quarter, India had registered a very robust export growth of 22%. And if that global trade growth comes down to 1%, then that would pose a big challenge to the Indian economy as well, because we are pegging very big on taking a big pie in the global export market. So, in this context, both the Delhis tell the government of India that their policy stance should be adjusted to the outlook of the global economy, which is looking gloomy because of more than 7 months of Russian invasion of Ukraine. In this context, the Hindu also tells that less than 7% of GDP growth would indeed pose a lot of challenge for the government to kickstart the investment and the growth prospects in the country. The Indian Express, on the other hand, reminded that 16.4% of the loans which were taken by the small and the medium size companies as part of as part of the emergency credit line guarantee scheme has gone under default, and these companies are not able to service their loans. Besides, the labor force participation in the urban areas is lower than the rural areas, while the wages are not going up even in the rural areas. In that context, it's going to be very, very challenging to keep the Indian economy in a good health. The Nobel Prize for Literature has gone to the French writer Arnie Ernaux. And the Indian Express has, along with the Times of India, both the Delhis have have tried to size up her journey from I to she. Arnie Ernaux abandoned the fiction form of writing, and she adopted the prose. And throughout her writing career, she has sought to deconstruct her own experiences in various era in genre. If we see that Arnie Ornox is the 17th woman to get the Nobel Prize for Literature, and that in some ways suggest a sort of gender bias even in the top award uh, house that is being talked about by the Times of India in its editorial. The Indian Express has talked about the books of Annie Aronnox, which are Man's Place, which came out in 1983, Woman's Story, which came in 1987, Shame, that came in 1996. And she totally abandoned I, which is subjective, to she, which is collective, in her novel The Years, which had come in 2019, which was shortlisted to the Booker Prize, the International Booker Prize. The Nobel citation for Ernie Arnox takes the note that she manifestly believes in the liberating force of writing. The Times of India reminded that while John Paul Sartre had got the Nobel Prize in Literature, de Beauvoir had missed out, and that signified a sort of gender bias in the Nobel Prize for Literature. The Pioneer has come out with an editorial about the unfinished agenda of unity of the CPI and the CPIM. The Delhi reminds that the CPI had shared power in Kerala for many decades under the blessings of the Congress, and the CPM in the 1980s was founded when about 30 members of the National Council of the CPI had walked out to form a new party because of the growing discomfort on the lines of CPI on the Soviet Russia and China. So that remains an unfinished agenda on the left unity. Otherwise, the left parties, if you look at the influence, the party has just been left with influence in Kerala and a few pockets in Chhattisgarh and Bihar. So this party is losing resonance among the Indian electorate, and the youth in particular have no uh, connect with the ideologies of the left parties. That was all that we had in today's analysis of the editorials. We will be back in the next tomorrow with another episode. Do share the link of the video with your friends and relatives, and do encourage them to subscribe to the channel also. Thank you so much.